A legally binding promise, a 10-year deal etched in corporate stone, broadcast to the entire world as a symbol of a new era of gaming. And yet, the biggest, most anticipated shooter on the planet, Call of Duty, is reportedly set to break that very promise on day one. The ink is barely dry on Microsoft's colossal $70 billion acquisition of Activision-Blizzard, and already, the first major crack is beginning to show, specifically for millions of expectant Nintendo fans. What in the world is going on here? Is this landmark agreement, heralded as a victory for player choice, already turning into a masterclass in corporate doublespeak? Today, we are diving headfirst into the swirling vortex of leaks, promises, and politics surrounding the next Call of Duty and its conspicuous absence from the launch of Nintendo's next-generation console. In this deep dive, we are going to dissect the explosive leak from an industry insider with a near-perfect track record that claims Nintendo players will be left watching from the sidelines. We will then pull back the curtain on the multi-billion-dollar political chess match that led to Microsoft's ironclad 10-year contract with Nintendo, and question why it might not be the guarantee everyone assumed it was. And finally, we will confront the multi-million-dollar question. Will a mainline Call of Duty game truly, genuinely arrive on a Nintendo platform with the respect it deserves, or is this just the first chapter in a decade-long saga of disappointment? The story begins with a name that sends ripples through the gaming community whenever it appears: D-Lab's Bill Coon. This isn't some anonymous troll on a forgotten forum. This is a leaker with a history of such profound accuracy on everything from PlayStation Plus lineups to unannounced game releases that their words are treated as gospel by many. And just recently, Bill Coon dropped a bombshell. They stated that they can, and I quote, confirm that the next installment in the blockbuster franchise, referred to in the report as Call of Duty Black Ops 7, will not launch on the Nintendo Switch 2 when it arrives on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Let that sink in for a moment. Not a rumor, not a maybe, but a confirmation from a source who is very rarely wrong. This single statement completely flies in the face of the public narrative Microsoft has been carefully crafting for over a year. You'll remember the impassioned speeches from Microsoft executives. They were committed, they said, to bringing Call of Duty to Nintendo's next platform. They wanted to bring more choice to more players. Yet, at the very first hurdle, with the very first game release post-acquisition, that commitment appears to be wavering. This leak raises an immediate and troubling question. What does skipping at launch actually mean? Is this a simple delay of a few weeks to polish a port? Or is it a softer, more corporate-friendly way of saying it's on the back burner, a low-priority project that will arrive many months or even a year later, long after the hype has died down and the global player base has established itself on other platforms? This ambiguity is precisely where the concern lies for Nintendo fans, because this isn't just about one game, it's about setting a precedent for the next 10 years. And to understand the weight of that precedent, we have to rewind to the year 2023. The sheer scale of the corporate maneuvering during Microsoft's acquisition of Activision-Blizzard was mind-boggling. A global drama played out in front of regulators from the European Union to the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority. These bodies were terrified that Microsoft, by owning Call of Duty, would create an unbeatable monopoly. They weren't just concerned about exclusivity. They were worried about a future where Microsoft could degrade the quality of the PlayStation version, delay content, or use its ownership to subtly nudge players towards the Xbox ecosystem. In response, Microsoft launched a full-scale charm offensive. They offered deals to everyone, promising to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation, and, most surprisingly, making a public, high-profile 10-year deal with Nintendo. This wasn't just a casual handshake agreement. Microsoft's own president, Brad Smith, brandished the contract, calling it a legally binding commitment. It was a masterstroke of public relations designed to paint Microsoft as a benevolent custodian of the franchise, a company interested in expanding access, not restricting it. It was a crucial piece of evidence in their case, a tangible exhibit designed to prove to regulators that they would not and could not restrict access to the world's most popular first-person shooter. They used this promise to win their case. They used it to get their $70 billion deal across the finish line. The question now is, was it all just for show? Was this legally binding contract simply a brilliant strategic maneuver, a sacrificial pawn in a much larger corporate chess game, designed to be fulfilled only to the absolute minimum letter of the law, rather than in the spirit of true partnership and platform parity? Breaking that spirit so soon risks validating every single fear that competitors and regulators voiced during that bitter year-long battle. The politics and the sheer financial weight behind this entire saga are absolutely fascinating, aren't they? If you're enjoying this deep dive into the business behind the games we love, please take a second to hit that like button. It tells us you appreciate this kind of detailed analysis and helps our channel bring more of these stories to light. This latest leak is made all the more worrying by the history, or rather the complete lack thereof, of Call of Duty on Nintendo's most successful home console ever. To date, not a single mainline Call of Duty title has ever been released on the Nintendo Switch. Not one. Despite the console selling over 140 million units, a market that any other publisher would be desperate to tap into, Activision consistently ignored it. This isn't just about the Switch's life cycle, it's a pattern of behavior that goes back even further. The last time a mainline Call of Duty title graced a Nintendo home console was with Call of Duty Ghosts on the Wii U back in 2013. That version was notoriously undersupported, lacking downloadable content that was available on other platforms and suffering from a dwindling online player base. The commercial failure of that port likely created a lasting negative perception within Activision's leadership, cementing the idea that Nintendo's audience simply wasn't the core demographic for their flagship shooter. This historical baggage is crucial. It suggests that the decision to ignore the Switch wasn't just a technical one, but a deeply ingrained business and marketing strategy. Activision itself has proven it can work with Nintendo hardware, as both the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon remakes found a happy and successful home on the hybrid console. The capability is there, it just seems the will has been absent for nearly a decade when it comes to its golden goose. This long and barren history casts a very dark shadow over the current promises, making this leak feel less like a shock and more like a frustratingly predictable continuation of the status quo. Now the question is whether Microsoft's acquisition is powerful enough to overwrite a decade of corporate habit and skepticism. Let's talk about the game itself, the mysteriously titled Black Ops 7. Revealed with a stunning and lengthy cinematic trailer at the recent Xbox Games Showcase, the game promises a deep dive into the world of psychological warfare, placing players under the command of David Mason, a familiar face to fans of the series. While concrete gameplay details are still under wraps, the reveal set a dark and intriguing tone that has fans excited. Now, the official report on this leak also contains a strange contradiction, mentioning both a release later this year and a launch in 2025. This has understandably caused some confusion, as the gaming world is widely anticipating the next Call of Duty to launch in the holiday window of 2024. Whatever the final title is and whichever date is correct, the central issue remains its potential absence on a major new console. So let's play devil's advocate. Why might a port be delayed? Launching a massive AAA game on 5 established platforms is already a Herculean task. Adding a 6th platform, one that is a brand new, unreleased piece of hardware, into that mix is a logistical nightmare. A modern Call of Duty game is a technological behemoth, not just in graphics, but in its demand for a locked 60 or even 120 frames per second online. Porting this to a new console, especially one rumored to prioritize efficiency and battery life over raw power, is not a simple task. It requires a dedicated team of engineers to potentially rebuild rendering pipelines, create entirely new asset sets, and rigorously test every mechanic. Furthermore, there's the online infrastructure. Integrating a new platform into the complex cross-play ecosystem of Call of Duty servers is a monumental undertaking. A rushed port could be a disaster, plagued with bugs and poor performance that would tarnish both the Call of Duty and Nintendo brands. From this perspective, a delay might be a responsible choice. Or, more cynically, it could be a calculated business decision. A staggered launch creates a second marketing beat. 6 months after the initial hype on PlayStation and Xbox has peaked, Microsoft could launch a Call of Duty on the Go campaign, targeting the Nintendo Switch 2's unique portability. They could even bundle the game with the first season pass, presenting it as a more feature-complete addition to incentivize Nintendo players who waited. It's a move that makes perfect business sense, but feels deeply disrespectful to the players who were promised they'd be part of the global community from day one. But for fans who bought into the promise of parity, of being part of the global launch day excitement, none of these reasons will soften the blow. The feeling of being treated as a secondary priority is a difficult pill to swallow. So, where does this leave us? We are caught between the rock of a legally binding contract and the hard place of a highly credible leak. On one hand, Microsoft has legally obligated itself to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms for the next 10 years. Violating that contract in the very first year would be a public relations disaster. It is almost certain that Call of Duty Black Ops 7, or whatever it will be called, will eventually come to the Nintendo Switch 2. The real question is not if, but when and how. The delay, if it proves true, speaks volumes. It suggests that while the contract is a legal reality, the spirit of true day-and-date partnership may be a fantasy. It positions Nintendo not as an equal partner at the launch table with Sony and Microsoft, but as a separate, lower-priority obligation to be fulfilled when it's convenient. For the next decade, Nintendo players may find themselves in a frustrating pattern, always invited to the party, but always showing up late. This entire story is dynamic and is guaranteed to evolve as we get closer to the launch of both the new Call of Duty and the Nintendo Switch 2. You can be absolutely certain that we will be here to cover every single twist and turn. To make sure you don't miss any of our future updates or our final analysis when the official announcements are made, please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. In the end, the arrival of the first Call of Duty on a Nintendo console in over a decade will still be a landmark moment. But this initial, reported stumble suggests that the road to true platform equality is going to be a long and bumpy one. The ultimate test of Microsoft's promise won't be the simple presence of a Call of Duty game box on a store shelf next to Mario and Zelda. It will be in the timing, the quality, and the long-term support that shows Nintendo players they are finally being treated as first-class citizens in the global gaming community.